Everyone, Xavier here, and we're going to do a little biographic interview of the computer art man himself, Jeff Mueller. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening, Xavier.
Jeff, folks want to know a little bit about you. Where are you from originally?
I was born and raised I was born in Milwaukee and then raised in the suburbs of Milwaukee. Actually, it would have been New Berlin, West Dallas, and went to school there and lived the first 40 years of my life there.
And where have you lived the last blank number of years? I won't give it away.
I lived the last 10 years, almost 10 years, here in Canton, Ohio.
Excellent. Are you an only child or the oldest, youngest, middle child?
I am the oldest of three. I have two sisters.
Your parents still with us?
Yes, they are. They actually right now live in San Diego, California, in Escondido.
Very nice. Jeff, when did you first and how did you first get interested in art?
Well, when I was younger, my father was a commercial artist. He worked as a photographic retoucher for Dunker Studios in Milwaukee. And I was always, there's days he had to take me to work, and I would go to work with him, and I kind of was around artwork. My dad also did some acrylic painting. He liked to do some small landscapes and barns and that type of stuff, that type of work. So I was always around artwork at a young age. I have to say I always liked artwork, and I kind of showed my own interest. Probably started showing interest at the end of 8th grade, which would put me at about 13 years old.
Did you then go on to study art-related subjects in high school and or college?
Yes, I was able to, because I started late as far as school goes, I was able to show a drawing portfolio and get into some advanced classes my senior year of high school. And then I started working part-time for my father because in my junior year, he decided that he was going to go out on his own, and he started his own commercial art business, which was photographic retouching with an airbrush and airbrush illustrations out of our basement.
What was the name of that business?
That business was called Air Artworks. He started that business and I showed an interest, and he kind of started training me as his apprentice from about my junior year in high school.
Then where did you attend college?
I attended 2 years at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in their fine art department. I had a couple good teachers. Adolf Rosenblatt really was inspirational to me there. And then after the 2 years, I wanted to go into a more, the fine art was a great base, but I wanted to get into commercial art with my father. So I applied at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, MIAD, for my junior year, got in there, and went there a year.
And then somewhere along in there, jumping out of the professional track and into the personal track, your life changed a little bit too.
So I started working full time, and in 1984 to 1989, I was working full time training to be an airbrush artist or a photographic retoucher using the airbrush. But that's when my life changed, because my dad pretty much put everything out on the line and formed Altered Images, which was a computer art studio. The computers back then to start that studio in 1989 were about $500,000. It was a big investment.
And that's quite a risk. And you weren't exactly a single man by that time either, were you?
No, in 1984, I met the love of my life, my wife Rachel. We basically, from that point, she pretty much made me. There's a saying I always like to go with, is behind every great man, there is a great woman, and I definitely have a great woman.
And you guys are going to be celebrating how many years this year?
This year will be our 28th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations, that's great. So getting back onto the professional track there, it's now 1989. You've invested into the paint box, and what happens after that?
Well, the studio Altered Images becomes a very, very successful studio, especially dealing with the commercial art industry in Milwaukee, which isn't huge. We were able to draw jobs out of Chicago, out of New York City, out of Colorado. We were able to expand our market and work on some really nice stuff. But at the peak, which was probably the mid-90s, the Macintosh started to get a foothold. And we always had, it's funny because the paint box was $500,000. My first Quadra 950 bundled was $20,000, which was a huge investment that we were making. But the amount of money you could make and bill hourly, it demanded, you were able to demand that price to help pay for the equipment back then.
So you were able to capitalize it relatively quickly.
Right, so it was a natural transition to be using a Macintosh, and as we kept using the Macintosh kept getting stronger, and the Macintosh kept getting cheaper. Our second paint box that we purchased in 1992 was $250,000. It was half price. So, and it had double the power. So things started to, the power kept going up, but the price kept coming down.
To put that in perspective, tell us how much you have invested in your current platform.
Well, I have an iMac, i7 chip. I walked out of the Apple store, which an iMac has the monitor built right back in. It's a more powerful machine than the paint box, and I walked out of there for under $2,000.
Wow, unbelievable. More powerful. It's probably only about 100 times more powerful than the paint box.
Yes.
That's something else. Okay, so now we're into the mid 90s, and tell us what's happening in the industry and with you.
As the industry unfolds, we do really well. At Altered Images peak, I believe we had 14 employees, including salespeople. We had production artists. We had put in an LVT scanner to print out our digital images onto transparency if need be, and it was really going well. But all good things must come to an end. And as the Mac started to get its foothold in dropping the price, getting artwork through at the price that we were dealing with, the prices we were dealing with became more and more of a challenge. As far as me personally, I was in the process through the 90s. My oldest son was born in 1988, and my youngest son was born in 1999, with 2 daughters thrown in there.
Awesome. So now we're through the 90s and into the early 21st century here, 2002, 2003, 2004. There were some things that happened both professionally and personally there that are of note.
Well, I had to come to a decision. As the industry, I was redefining myself. I was had purchased a Macintosh computer. It was a G5, strong machine in the early, 2000, I think that was 2003. And I was taking that into the agencies and actually doing on-site retouching. I was taking it into the photographers. But that part of my business was a brand new part of my business, while the established part of the business was eroding, which then led to less and less employees, and it actually led to my parents, it was my father's business, sold it to me. So in 2003, I was working by myself, redefining myself, but I came to a crossroads. I had to make a decision what I was going to do. I had a family, 4 children I was raising, high school to 4-year-old, and I really had to make a decision based off my family. Go and get a job, a stable job in the advertising industry at an agency, or I actually had a cousin in Canton, Ohio, who had a business that was not art, but he was offering me more money and it was a managerial position, and he was offering me more money than I was being offered in the art industry. And so I made that change, decided to move from my family from Milwaukee to Canton, Ohio.
That was what year?
We actually made the decision in September on my 40th birthday to move here, but in November my family was here. I came first for a couple months and made sure it was all okay and everything went well.
So now you're working full-time in a managerial position, and were you doing anything in the art world at that point?
I had maintained my best clients for the first 3 years that I was here. These were the clients I enjoyed doing work for. The internet had come strong enough that I could work on some nice high-end jobs, still get paid on the side, and do my managerial job. But as time passed, I kept connections, but my managerial job started paying me more, demanding a little bit more time, and I let the advertising connections go and maintained 1 or 2 people that I kept working with. And then I also worked with the stock photographer who was my childhood friend and I had been working all along with, and I kept my creative juices flowing for a good 5 years by working directly as his image manipulator, image manager, and then I was creating artwork for him also. So he kept the creative part going pretty well.
So then what tipped the scales that you had the vision of what came to be known as the social media series for both its subject and the means that it was produced and promoted? And what was the motivation then to leave what you were doing there and delve back into what is arguably a brand new branch of fine art, or at least a different medium?
Well, one of the things by connecting with my friend and working in stock photography and with him as far as creating images and visions, one of the things that we did together was we would keep up on technology. We went to several photographic conventions at the Javits Center in New York City together. We would meet up in New York City and just have a good time, but we stayed up on the technology. And one of the technologies that was being advanced, that when I first made the move here was really unobtainable based off of price, which would have cost you anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, now was becoming a viable option, and that was printing artwork, digital artwork on canvas. And that was at a reasonable price. And through these shows, I was kind of watching what people were doing with it and brainstorming what I would do with it. That if you could print digital imagery, created imagery onto canvas, and then using the painting skills that I had developed throughout the years, this would be an awesome way, an awesome new art form. Because I had done some really good digital imagery, had messed around a little bit with painting in the computer, but there was no way to accurately present it in a way that was competitive to an actual painting.
Interesting. So, in a nutshell, describe your process from inception to completion.
All right.
The high points.
The great part of this is a great process. This is where passion comes in. This is everything that my whole career, this process I've been trained for. Working as a photographic retoucher, working as a digital illustrator, working as an airbrush